I've mentioned my guide. I have these dreams that aren't really dreams. They're different than my regular dreams. I tend to remember them a lot more vividly. In this particular dream, my guide was standing next to the bed. I dream that I'm asleep pretty often, which makes waking life really confusing sometimes. But he kind of said, "Come with me," and so I got up and I followed him, and he took me to this place, and he opened the door and kind of like directed me to step inside. And when I walked in, it was this large open room, and there were people that were dressed nicely. It looked like a cocktail party or something similar. There was like a string ensemble that was playing live music in one corner, and there was a bar in another. Very plush surroundings without being opulent, very comfortable. It looked like somebody's really nice living room. And all of these people were milling around. Like I said, they were dressed nicely. And I'm kind of like, what am I doing here? What's going on? And he takes me back into the second room. There was a bathroom, that was the third room, but there was only one other room there. And in that room was a hospital bed. And in that bed was a man. And there was a nurse or a doctor that was there kind of in the background. This man was hooked up to some machines. But I walk up to his bed and I asked my guide, "What am I doing here?" And he said, "You're here to help him die." And then he disappeared. And I'm standing there thinking, I don't know how to do this. I know how to help somebody after they've crossed. I know how to, you know, kind of have conversations about what happens next and help them find where it is they need to go next, but not on this side of things. I've never done this before. I don't know how to do this. Well, the man apparently had been told I did, because he reached his hand out to me and said, "Oh, Melissa, it's so nice to meet you. I'm so glad you came. Thank you for coming today." And I talked to him. I asked him, what his diagnosis was, and we talked about that. And he talked about how he was terminal and that he had chosen today as the day that he wanted to die. They invited their friends. They had like a living wake. His friends would come in and out as I was talking to him. They would bring their drink, they'd have a laugh, they'd sit by his bed and hold his hand and have a conversation, they'd say their goodbyes, and they'd walk off and the next person would come in. But it flowed. It wasn't orchestrated. It was very organic, and he was relaxed and he felt supported, and they celebrated his life as they were celebrating him transitioning out of it. They were there to support that transition in any way that he needed. So I left his room and I walked next door where I saw another room, different people, different music, slightly different furniture, a different man. Pretty much the same experience with both men. Over the course of hours, I just answered their questions and held their hand and talked them through it and tried to level set their expectations and their fears. And at the end of that evening, or however, I have no idea, I have no concept of how much time passed in the dream. One man died. And that first man, though, when I went in to see him, said, "Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to go today. I think everybody's going to be disappointed, though. I mean, they all showed up for me." And I remember telling him, "It doesn't matter. They're your friends. They're here for you whenever you decide that you're ready to do this. And they'll be happy to spend a little more time with you rather than say goodbye today. You're under no obligation today." And then the dream ended. But what it left me with was the stark contrast between how we die now in America and that. We need that. We need the waiting room full of people with joyous expectation to help us into that boat that carries us away. We need our loved ones, or just the people we want there. It doesn't have to be your whole family. It can be a party. It doesn't have to be a raucous, crazy kegger, but being able to have a nibble and a drink and listen to music and share memories and stories while that person we love chooses the moment that they're going to leave is so profound. And it's become the focus of everything that I want to do now. I want to see this everywhere before I make that leap into whatever comes next. I want to see places where we can choose regardless of our income. This shouldn't be something that only the wealthy are allowed. It needs to be something that all of us have access to as a choice for how we want to move forward into whatever it is that comes next. Surrounded by our friends and loved ones outside of the hospital setting with the medical care that we require while being still fully supported by death midwives like me and all of our friends and the people who love us the most. I believe that helps us not be so afraid. That's the goal. That's where we're headed. That's where this is headed. And this is just the first step. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it this way, to record everything and share everything and explain everything from the very beginning as we watch this progress, because it's got to be a group effort. It has to be all of us willing to stand up and say, I don't want to go like that. I don't want to go in a hospital surrounded by machines that make noise and doctors I don't know and people that aren't fully invested in the me that I've created over the span of my life. I want it to be sacred again and surrounded by your tribe and and given all of the joy that it can possibly be, because it doesn't have to be suffering and sadness.